All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Katelyn Mason. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm a capacity building specialist on the Midwest Capacity Building team at AIDS United. We are funded by the CDC through a 1904 grant, and we deliver capacity building services through technical assistance. And we offer that for things like structural interventions, integrated HIV planning, and core topics like condom distribution, syringe service programs, and cluster response and detection. We are actually here today for a special World State interview with Gloe. And I'll go ahead and let Kara introduce herself.
Thanks, Katelyn. My name is Kara Gloe, and I am a mental health therapist. I am licensed in North Dakota and Minnesota. I currently work at Canopy Medical Clinic, which is an independent clinic that primarily provides gender-affirming care and healthcare services to the LGBTQIA2S plus population. Last year, Canopy Medical Clinic received a grant from the North Dakota Ryan White program to start providing mental health services to people living with HIV/AIDS in the state of North Dakota. So those services include mental health medication management by our advanced practice nurse practitioners. And then I was hired to provide individual therapy and develop a peer support program for people living with HIV/AIDS in North Dakota. Together with a steering committee of folks living with or who have lived experience with HIV/AIDS, we launched our program in September. We offer online group peer support, in-person group peer support, and individual peer support. And so far we have about 13 people registered for our services, and that number is steadily growing.
That's awesome, especially since you all just started in September.
Yeah.
So really excited to have you here. Our conversation today is part of many across our organization to mark the World AIDS Day. This is part of our Partnering and Communicating Together initiative, or also known as PACT. And this is part of AIDS United, which provides messaging and resources for HIV prevention, testing, treatment for both community and for providers. And if you want to find out more about this, you can follow the hashtag StopHIVTogether or visit cdc.gov/StopHIVTogether, and that should be popping up on the screen now. So, Kara, I know you mentioned the program that you had that started in September with the 13 folks. Over in September, we actually met with you all. Our capacity building team worked with you all in September regarding this program. Can you talk a little bit more about what this program entails and how it furthers the plan for ending the HIV epidemic in the United States?
Sure. The Canopy Peer Navigation Program's mission is to be relentless champions for people affected by HIV/AIDS and do all we can to help them thrive. So not just live, not just survive, but thrive. Our vision is to inspire healthy lives and caring communities for people living with HIV/AIDS. We plan to achieve these goals by pairing people living with HIV/AIDS with peer navigators. So our peer navigators are people who are also living with HIV/AIDS or have lived experience with HIV/AIDS. And they are people who have learned how to navigate the various complicated systems. They have developed coping skills to deal with some of the stigma that unfortunately comes along with an HIV diagnosis. They have likely had difficult conversations with loved ones, and they are willing to support other folks with the life lessons that they have learned. It's a very horizontal approach to support, which is often less intimidating and feels more welcoming than some of the more clinical approaches. Peer support is well researched and very well validated. And we have a truly amazing team of peer navigators. So we are thrilled to bring this service to North Dakota.
That's really awesome. Could you tell me a little bit more about the peer navigators on your team? How many you have, some of the life experiences they bring in that make them particularly great for working in North Dakota, things like that?
Sure. So we have 3 peer navigators right now. They are all gay men. And, some of them are living with HIV, and some of them have lost partners to HIV. So, one way or the other, that their lives have been impacted by the HIV epidemic. They come from various backgrounds. One is a retiring pastor of a very progressive Lutheran church who has done a lot of work in the LGBTQ community in the Fargo Moorhead area, and is very well respected for that work that he has done. One is a teacher at a local public school. One works in state government, and 2 of them are finishing grad school. Some of them have lived in other places in the country. Some have only lived here. And I think that that's a really great balance, because a lot, the state of North Dakota is, made up of some people who were born here and who have never left, and some people who have traveled all over and come back.
Yeah. And what is the scope of your all's project? Do you provide services to all of North Dakota or just a specific area?
We're doing the whole state. And we're able to do that because a lot of the services that we offer are online, right? I don't know how familiar folks are with North Dakota. It's a lot of land, and not a lot of people concentration, and concentrated in certain spots. There are a couple places that have higher human concentration, but I think cows take up more space than people here. So we do offer services to the whole state, and we have one in-person group right now that's in Fargo. Otherwise, the rest of our support groups are online, so anyone from anywhere in the state can access them. We don't have a requirement that people, we do require people to register ahead of time. And then I do as much vetting as I can to make sure that the online group spaces are as safe as they possibly can be. But then once you're there, there's no requirement to use your real name, turn on your camera. It's hard in rural places where everyone knows everyone to feel confident in engaging in some of these services if you are unprepared to out your status. So we try to make it as safe as possible, and B, give people the flexibility to engage in the way that feels most comfortable to them.
If there was an individual watching who lived in North Dakota and was interested in these support groups, is there a link that they could access to learn more and be vetted for it?
Yes, absolutely. So I would direct them to canopymedicalclinic.com. And across the top, you will see a a list of things you can click on. If you click on services, excuse me, click on services and then go to Ryan White, that is where you would register for peer navigation, either group, individual, or both. I love it when people register for both. Yeah, and so then I would, that is the correct link. Thank you, Katelyn. Yeah, and then I reach out to people when they register, have a conversation with them to try and get a feel of what it is, what kind of support they're looking for, what they hope to get from the program. This helps me get a better sense of which peer navigator might be best for them, and also just kind of introduce them to the program and, set realistic expectations. So like if you're coming to group, we've had 3 people in a group max so far. Different people have attended different groups, but we haven't had more than 3 people in one group. So I just like to let people know that, groups are small right now, but we are working really hard to get the word out and grow those groups so that they can be, as supportive as possible.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. So this sounds like a really good program. Sounds like you got a lot of good stuff going on. So what led you to ask for technical assistance in the capacity building from AIDS United in the first place?
Sure. So it is and was and continues to be really important to me that our peer navigators are partners, and that they feel like they are partners in this program. I don't have the lived experience they have, so I cannot run this program as though I'm some kind of expert. Conversely, our peer navigators are not necessarily people specifically trained in mental health, trauma, or who have specific medical training. So knowing that this job is likely going to be tough at times, the peer navigator job, connecting with people, hearing their hard stories, supporting them through their struggles, that is bound to take a toll on folks. So knowing that it is going to be tough, I felt pretty adamant from the very beginning about not sending our peer navigators out into the world without proper training and preparation. So that's why we turned to AIDS United for technical assistance.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're really glad to meet you all. And I really love your program because we talk a lot about meaningful involvement with people living with HIV and AIDS. We talk about nothing without us, and there's so often with both staff or volunteers of certain positions that people will have specific requirements of wanting someone who is has a degree or is licensed in mental health. And that's a really great thing to have. But when we're talking about the lived experiences of the community and stuff, that's so much more important, because we can train people. We can teach someone mental health services. We can't teach someone what it's like to actually live with HIV and be affected by it. And so it's such a great program, and we were really excited to provide capacity building. So you all received it. I can always blow my own horn, but that doesn't really mean much. So what did you like about our TA process? And you can compare that to other TA or training you've had, or just how much you liked it in general, or did like it. We take constructive feedback.
We loved it, Katelyn, 100%. There was none of our team members. I checked in with them all after the last session wrapped, and they were all like, wide-eyed and like, wow, that was a lot of really good information. I'm going to need to go back and rewatch that and make sure I'm digesting it. So everyone was 100% about the quality of the training. Yeah. So, but to answer your question, like, feeling as strongly as I did about having good training from the beginning, I started researching training programs, and I really struggled to find training specifically HIV/AIDS related. So I, in an attempt to put something together, I started piecing together trainings that were focused on different, medical issues, health related diagnoses. And then was like, my goal was to just revamp it, right? To make it relevant to our goals. When one of our peer navigators very kindly shut that down. um, well, there are other health diagnoses that have overlapping, aspects. Um, being diagnosed with cancer is not like being diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. Which I was really grateful for, that very gentle, like, no, we are not doing training, cancer training, right? But then I was kind of like at a loss of what do we do? Where do we find this training? And ultimately, it was the same peer navigator who made the connection to the person who made the connection, who got us to AIDS United, which again just really speaks to how critically important it is to work with people with the lived experience, because they also have the connections.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. And for folks listening, AIDS United, as I mentioned, we provide capacity building services through a CDC grant. And essentially, we can provide these services to anyone who is either directly or indirectly funded by the CDC. So essentially, any health department, specifically in the Midwest, if you are outside of the Midwest in the United States, there are other organizations that we can send you to. And there might be topics within the Midwest that we send you to one of our partner organizations. But essentially, if you are a program that is receiving grant money from a health department for a Ryan White program, you likely qualify as an organization. And to request our services, typically you would work with the local health department to submit a CTS request and get that in and completed on your behalf. But a lot of times, the smaller organizations aren't necessarily aware that we are a completely free service as well. Both virtual, occasionally you can do in-person stuff. We can do it for anywhere in the Midwest and cover a lot of topics. Or if you have a question for something that we don't provide a topic on, a lot of times we can link you to training or technical assistance and capacity building from another organization. So was really, really glad that those linkages were able to be made and we were able to meet with y'all. How we talked a little bit about how much you enjoyed it. How did the technical assistance efforts we did in our TA and our event delivery, how did that address the barriers that you all had to implementing your program?
So training was the final piece of the puzzle for us. We had been working together for several months. We developed like the scope of the project, how we were going to implement the project, what it was going to look like. We developed the forms, the application forms, how the logistics, like how I was going to take in the registrations, how I was going to, link the people who have registered to the peer navigators. We had done all of that. And training was just the last thing that we needed before I felt like we were ready to launch. And, the training was perfect. It was exactly what we needed. It encompassed everything we felt was important from equity, inclusion, intersectionality, mental health, healthy boundaries, self-care, to programs and assistance that are available to people living with HIV/AIDS. I honestly could not have hoped for a more thorough introductory training. And then, like I said, it was really the culmination of our program development and helped us feel prepared to launch and start doing the work.
It's always good to get good feedback. So thank you for that. And I know the one thing I always find from TA is that when you get into conversations, it ends up being that there's so much to cover, and trying to balance having all the information, also having it be a meaningful conversation that actually builds folks. You can't just sit for 12 hours learning facts all day. That's not going to help. So for the TA that we provided, what do you think the most impactful part of that technical assistance was for your program and for your organization in general?
Yeah, I think the expertise, the flexibility, and the regular communication from AIDS United was really important for us. We had some specific requests, but we don't train people, and you don't know what you don't know. So AIDS United took our requests and incorporated other necessary items to ensure that we were really getting a holistic, complete training experience by folks from diverse backgrounds who were able to make the content relevant and digestible. Additionally, AIDS United was very flexible. So we were 4 people, who don't all work at the same organization, right? We don't live in the same town. We have very different lives. So 4 people with different work life schedules and balances. And AIDS United was really flexible with working with us, given those sort of scheduling barriers. And I also really appreciated how AIDS United, how y'all stayed in really regular contact with us, right? Like as we were building this program, we had some pre-established meeting times, a couple times a month to do the work of planning and development. You guys were able to come to a couple of those regularly scheduled meetings, so I didn't have to ask these folks to take off even more time from work. Coming to those meetings meant that everyone on the team had a chance to ask questions and offer input in the designing of the training before the training ever took place. So again, it just really helped with making sure that everyone felt like an equal stakeholder in even just the development of the training.
Yeah. I've been at trainings and capacity building events before where you go not knowing what's going to happen. And it's like, well, that was cool, but not really sure why I was there. And so we want to make sure that, the management's involved, the folks actually receiving the training. And it's not always going to look like everyone in the room planning. Sometimes it's just making sure that they're part of it. But it was really great, especially working with a small team, to make sure that the services we were providing, that we were going to deliver on right the first time by engaging with you all and having those touch points. And I know a lot of people are like, wow, a lot of meetings, that sounds awful. But I'm pretty proud of my ability to have a meeting. And I think every time we had one, we got a lot done. We learned more about the organization and what you all needed to do. And I think it really helped enhance the TA we were eventually able to deliver.
I agree.
So it's been a few months since you all started, since we delivered that last piece of technical assistance to y'all. So what has this program looked like since September when it began?
Sure. Well, we launched the day after training, so we wasted no time. There are currently 9 people registered for individual support and 8 people registered for group support. Like I said, a total of 13. Some of those people are, receiving both services. Last month, our peer navigators logged 345 minutes of support between individual and group support. We also brought in our first speaker to one of our online groups last month. She was a dietitian she is a dietitian, I should say, who presented on eating for immune health. This month, we're going to host another speaker who is going to present on food, heating, and housing assistance programs available through her organization. So we're excited to start bringing these really relevant topics to people, especially it's winter in Fargo, North Dakota. So heating, housing, and food, very relevant.
I'm pretty sure I read that North Dakota is like the second coldest place in the United States after Alaska.
I do not have a hard time believing that. I'm originally from South Dakota, which is not actually all that far away. But the difference in temperature is surprising. I was surprised. It's like 20 degrees for a 6-hour drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we are excited about, bringing in these speakers to the groups. We are also being really intentional about making sure that even on days when we have speakers, there is time available for group participants to get any support they need that may be unrelated to the speakers, right? So we are reserving time specifically to ask people what they need, open the floor to discuss what they are experiencing so that there's never a missed opportunity to be supportive, specifically in ways people need that support.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of this program every time I hear about it. So it's really good to hear that you all started immediately.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about any specific or notable successes you've had in these past few months?
Yeah. Well, I expected this program to be a slow growing program. Because it's so new, because as far as I'm aware, there's never been a program like this in North Dakota. So honestly, I'm thrilled that we have 13 people registered. And it's really exciting to know that, even though it might be like a small number of people, they are comfortable with the navigators and the program to the extent that they are accessing their navigators for 345 minutes a month. They feel that connection. They feel that sense of ease and comfortability enough to reach out over and over again if and when they need that support. So I feel over the moon about that.
What kind how have you all been trying to advertise this opportunity and get more folks registered?
Yeah. So we do work directly with the Ryan White case managers. I've developed a flyer that they can hand out. We are going to meet with them actually next week to to talk a little bit more about our hopes for the way they can, kind of more directly point people in our direction, and talk more about how we can also then better support them. We're doing, Facebook advertising. I set up events for all of our groups. We are collaborating with other organizations. We are advertising on Google. We're advertising on Grindr, and really just trying to spread the word that way. Someday, I hope to sit down and compile a list of all medical clinics in the state of North Dakota that we can, we have rat cards developed and little business card type things so I hope to develop a list of all of the clinics in North Dakota so I can call and make connections and then send them these, just little pieces of literature on our program that people could just pretty easily slip into their pockets. I have lots of big communication goals. Just gotta find the time to make them happen.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you will, and you might get to the point where you're needing more peer navigators.
Yeah, that would be great. We would love that.
Yeah, and of course we recorded our TA, so they can always watch that. But as topics come up, because it's an ever-growing field, we learn more and more. We're always excited to offer more assistance as that program gets bigger.
We will take you up on that, Katelyn.
Sounds great. So tell me a little bit, if I was an organization that was in a similar, I was, Ryan White related, and I wanted to form a support peer-to-peer program. What would you tell them as far as an elevator speech of good advice?
Sure. I think the number one most important thing that I would say is to build a team that consists of people who have the necessary training and the lived experience. There's really, when I think back on what I was trying to do when I was trying to do it on my own, there's really no way we could have had the level of programming that we have now if I tried to do this completely on my own, exclusively from a mental health perspective. So I absolute number one priority. And then you don't have to do your own training. You don't have to build it, which was a huge relief to me. And then I would recommend that they work with AIDS United, because your team of folks are highly trained, both in their respective areas of knowledge and in the sharing of that knowledge, which is really important. And you're personable, friendly, funny, and we're really fantastic collaborators.
If I ever need someone to wingman me, thank you. We appreciate it. So on that topic, for capacity building services like the ones, that event that we had with you all in the training, how do you think those things and our services in general help aid the ending of the HIV epidemic plan and kind of build that gap? Because capacity building isn't necessarily the groundwork. We're not necessarily the peer navigators, and we're also not necessarily the folks doing research on stuff. Where do we kind of fit in on that?
Yeah, I think that capacity building services are essential. It's really unrealistic to expect that all teams of people who are doing the work to end the HIV epidemic have all of the knowledge about every aspect of it, right? Mm-hmm. Folks on the front line need quick access to ongoing training and information to stay abreast of, like you said, what can often feel like an ever-changing, ever-evolving landscape. at least now, right? Maybe that it didn't feel that way in the past, but it does feel that way now. In regards to medical advancements, trends, education, belief systems, and how those are changing. And I think without the capacity building services we received from AIDS United, it would have likely taken us even longer to launch our program. And I think we would have felt less prepared to launch it. And that ultimately would have meant that people went without these services for longer, and or it may have impacted the quality of the services we were able to, offer right out of the gate. Or it may have meant that there were a lot more tough lessons that we had to learn, in the process of doing the work, that we may get to avoid having to make those mistakes, learning those lessons the hard way, because we got the training in advance.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in vicarious learning, and I think capacity building often brings that, because it's about best practices, but it's also about what to avoid. And I think so often folks don't like to talk about like what mistakes have happened, but those are so important to communicate because it lets us know what not to do, and not make the same mistakes. So we are really glad that we were able to bring that. We are also really glad that we were able to work with your peer navigators and hear more experiences from them. I definitely feel like capacity building always ends with me feeling like I'm a little bit capacity built myself too. So I really enjoyed working with you all. I'm really excited to hear that you all have 13 folks participating. I hope the program keeps getting bigger and that you get those cards sent out to all the clinics.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you one more time for joining us, and just give you a moment if you have anything to say before we end today.
No, I just want to thank, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for working with us. Yeah, it was really like, it felt like the really perfect thing to do right the day before we launched. I think it was really the like lift and information that we needed. And yeah, we are just so excited to be doing this work and bringing this service to North Dakota. And honestly, like we kind of hope to expand a little bit, North Dakota and Minnesota. Fargo is on the border of Minnesota. And so it's across the bridge. So it's hard to, say like, oh, hello, person who lives 2 minutes away from my office, you can't receive these services because of this imaginary line. So we are working on being able to, encompass more folks.
Yeah, totally understand that. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and so we have Illinois on the other side, and frequently have partnerships and stuff. So that's really exciting to hear. As a reminder, there will probably, I think there's 1 or 2 more conversations. This was part of one of many conversations to mark World AIDS Day from my organization, AIDS United. This is part of the Partnering and Communicating Together initiative, also known as PACT, and they provide messaging and resources for HIV prevention, testing, and treatment for both community and providers. And if you want to find out more, you can check out #StopHIVTogether or visit cdc.gov/StopHIVTogether. And if you would like to hear more about SEPA services, specifically the ones AIDS United provides, you can check us out at aidsunited.org/capacity-building. We are always excited to hear from you, hear what kind of capacity service building needs you need. And we can always link you if it's not something that we particularly provide. And thank you all for watching. Thank you for joining us, and happy World AIDS Day.